Welcome to This Explainer. Every single day, we're all speaking a silent language that most of us aren't even aware of. Today, we're going to look really closely at how our facial expressions, our heavy eyes, and our shifting focus are constantly leaking clues about our true emotional state. We tend to put so much weight on the actual words people say, but the reality is, our faces and our eyes are almost always speaking first.
Think about that for a second. Have you ever just known? We absolutely love to believe we can hide behind a calm face, right? We construct these confident exteriors to mask what's really happening on the inside. But underneath it all, our minds are constantly at work, trying to protect themselves, manage stress, and just find a baseline sense of safety. These deep internal struggles literally cannot be completely hidden. Instead, they create this quiet, unseen story. And it's a story that highly observant people and deep feelers are naturally tuned in to read. Okay, let's just dive right in. Today we're covering 1. The silent language. 2. The observer and feeler. 3. The heavy social mask. 4. Anxiety and survival mode. And 5. Reading the real patterns.
Kicking things off with Section 1, the silent language, the gaze of the observer.
So picture this. We've all been in a room, maybe it's a really tense board meeting or a crowded dinner party, where someone is just completely dominating the conversation. A lot of people speak simply to fill those awkward pauses, but quiet individuals operate completely differently. They use silence and a steady gaze to watch behavior, analyze tone of voice, and gauge reactions. Notice the psychological contrast here. Speaking pushes information out, but listening and observing pull crucial information in. By keeping a quiet, steady gaze, these observers are picking up on subtle patterns, a nervous foot tap, a quick glance at the clock, a forced smile that everyone else completely misses because they're too busy talking. It makes these silent observers way more aware of their surroundings than they might seem at first glance. Moving right along to Section 2, the observer and feeler, the single look. Let's see how this builds into the way highly sensitive people perceive the world. It really comes down to micro-expressions. These are brief, totally involuntary changes in facial expressions that reveal the exact emotions someone is desperately attempting to hide. Imagine you're pitching a high-stakes idea to your boss. You might think you're acting completely normal, but a deep feeler's brain is wired completely differently. It instantly registers these tiny, split-second flashes of worry, stress, or irritation. You might think your secret is perfectly safe behind a polite smile, but to the deep feeler, that tiny muscle twitch is as loud as a shout. Because they experience life at a totally different emotional depth, highly observant people are constantly catching these subtle cues. They pick up on slight variations in your tone of voice. They notice a microscopic change in your behavior, or a sudden, unexplained pause in the conversation, kind of like a scratched record in an otherwise smooth song. They catch that single, fleeting look of worry or irritation that everyone else just breezes right past. They aren't reading your mind, they're just reading the data you're unknowingly broadcasting every single second of the day. Now for Section 3, the heavy social mask, hiding insecurities. Diving a bit deeper into the human psyche, pretty much everyone has something they secretly feel inadequate about, whether it's their career, their intelligence, or their social skills. And there's this great quote that really hits the nail on the head. The strain of pretending to be okay while hiding your deepest fears eventually leaks out. There's subtle, inconsistent changes in your expression. To avoid feeling vulnerable, we put on this incredibly heavy social mask of high confidence. But managing this performance while secretly carrying heavy, unprocessed thoughts, it puts your brain under immense psychological strain. You literally can't maintain the act perfectly. The sheer exhaustion of pretending to be okay eventually fractures that mask, and the truth leaks out. Which brings us to Section 4, anxiety and survival mode, the physical toll. Now we're going to peel back that final, deepest layer to explore what happens when the mind absolutely cannot shut down. Notice how this anxiety cycle progresses. Step 1, during the day, constant distractions act as a filter for our thoughts. We're busy, right? So we don't have to fully feel. But then comes Step 2. The nighttime quiet forces those suppressed emotions right back to the surface, which leads directly to Step 3. The anxious mind mentally rehearses future problems. It stays awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying conversations in a false attempt to find safety and control. Those heavy, tired eyes you see in the mirror the next morning, that's the very real, physical result of an anxious mind that refused to shut down. This actually brings us to a much more extreme version of this stress, hypervigilance. This is a state where the nervous system is literally stuck in survival mode, constantly scanning the environment for danger, even during rest.
When someone is going through periods of intense emotional pressure, you will literally see it in wide, hyper-alert eyes. It reveals a brain struggling with high stress that simply refuses to relax, constantly searching for threats in the shadows. The mind is so keyed up that it remains highly sensitive to emotions, sounds, and any little environmental change. In fact, extreme hyperalertness can disrupt your sleep entirely, leading to terrifying experiences like sleep paralysis, where the eyes remain open and alert, but the body is asleep. It really shows us just how intensely our unseen internal struggles can manifest physically. Your brain is so convinced it needs to protect you that it completely overrides your biological need to rest.
And finally, we've arrived at Section 5, Reading the Real Patterns, the conclusion. We've looked at the silent observer, the deep feeler, the social mask, the exhausted overthinker, and the hypervigilant mind. So let's bring it all together. The ultimate takeaway here is that eyes and expressions don't just show where you're looking, they reveal exactly how your mind is processing the world. Once you understand this hidden psychology, you realize that absolutely nothing is just a coincidence. Every single look, every heavy eyelid, every darting glance, and every forced smile is a direct reflection of an unseen internal battle. Our expressions are essentially real-time maps of how our minds are navigating the complexities around us. So if you really want to understand the hidden psychology of human behavior, you've got to look past the surface. Stop judging words. Start paying attention to real patterns. I'll leave you with this. Will you finally stop listening only to the words people use to fill the silence and start observing the revealing patterns they simply cannot help but show you?